Welcome, welcome, welcome to Reaching New Heights with Troy Bell, the city manager, City of Muskegon Heights, where you get to know what you need to know so you'll be in the know. Thank you again for tuning in to this week's show. Sorry I missed you last week. We had a council meeting going on, and um, my seven bosses would not take too kindly of me not being at a council meeting and being on the radio show instead. So the meeting did wrap up shortly before the show, but there's always things to take care of that precluded me from being able to join you last week, and I'm happy to be back this week. A number of things that we're going to cover in today's show. Hopefully, we will be joined by a guest here. I believe she is a surprise guest. She's running a little bit late, but I think she's still going to be able to make it for the show. So I will introduce her when she comes in the door, and we can shift to a brief interview for her. But in the meantime, I do want to catch us up on some of the events of the past couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So we will go ahead and just get started and dive in. I will ask you, though, as listeners or watchers, to chime into the show. Use the chat function if you have questions, if you have comments. I encourage you, as usual, to keep things positive because this show is all about reaching new heights. We can always learn from the things that we learned from the past in order to make the steps that we take in the future more effective and efficient and positive. So it is important to know where we come from to identify not only where we're going, but how we're going to get there. I just want us to remain positive, keep positive, because we are all about reaching new heights. So please chime in, ask the questions, and appreciate the comments every week on the show. I want to dedicate a portion of this show to talking about some ordinances because I've had in the last 3 or 4 weeks some issues come up that people were confused about or weren't aware about some of the ordinances. So we'll dive into that. But before we dive into that, I do want to share, in case you didn't know, in case you are not regularly on Facebook, that council has voted to select a new clerk. And it looks as though the clerk will be starting in the upcoming days. Don't have exact information on that. Still waiting to hear back from the council personnel committee on exactly what that transition is going to look like. But just to clarify, there are certain positions that report directly to council. The city manager, I'm hired by the seven-member council, the chief of police, uh, as well as the city clerk and the city attorney. So some people were confused that all personnel in City Hall reports to the city manager. And in some cities, it is set up that way. That is not the case in Muskegon Heights, if you didn't know. So the process of hiring a new clerk is a council process, very similar to the process for hiring a city manager. And so over the last few weeks, due to the retirement of our former clerk, Sharon Gibbs, the council has been recruiting for and going through the process of hiring a new clerk. And in a vote at our last meeting, they selected Jennifer Ross. That might sound familiar because I think Jennifer was here on the show not 3 weeks ago as a guest in our conversations about the wrap up. I called it the victory lap around the Juneteenth celebration. So at some point, will be happy to welcome Ms. Ross back to the show as the City of Muskegon Heights clerk and uh, a fellow employee, collaborator, and colleague in the work that is ahead of us for the City of Muskegon Heights. So exciting things. Sorry to wave goodbye to Ms. Gibbs. She served this community since 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So a number of years of hard work and good service. And now she is selecting retirement, but she's not gone because she has agreed to work with the county to help the city transition in the next election, which is August 2nd. Let me make sure I've got the right date on that. Yes, August 2nd. So she has a unique skill set and awareness and knowledge of the elections process. And so rather than have somebody new come in and try to work through all of the important details, we don't want to risk having any questions about the validity of the process in this primary election on August 2nd. And she's agreed to assist with that under the title of election coordinator. And a special thanks to Clerk Waters for working closely with Muskegon Heights to figure out the details to be able to make that transition from from Ms. Gibbs being the clerk into the role of election coordinator. So if you come into City Hall after today, and with regard to questions about ballots, requesting absentee ballots, confirming that your absentee ballot has been returned properly and received, those types of questions, or anything around the plethora of different things around the elections process. When you come into City Hall, you will be redirected from the clerk's office to the opposite side of the council chambers where the election coordinator's space is. And there's a sign on the door that says election coordinator. If you've ever been in City Hall and you've been to the inspections office, it is right in front of the inspections window. There's a door right there, and that is where you will find the election coordinator, aka Ms. Gibbs. So just a heads up on that. When you come into City Hall, things are a little bit different in that regard until we get through the election. And until the new incoming clerk has been trained and is certified to be able to fill that role, there is a transition process that we're going through. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to chime in online. I'll be keeping an eye out around the corner looking for any comments or questions about that. But I'm excited for us to take that next step in the future of Muskegon Heights and the opportunity to, again, reach new heights. So put a pin in that, and we can go ahead and transition into some other general news. So the regular work session of the council was this past Monday, at which we selected the clerk. Our next meeting will be in 2 weeks on the 25th of July. So we will have some announcements at that meeting concerning the cleanup of the community, a new program that the mayor is looking to roll out and get approval from council, some updates on projects. So number of things that will be important for July 25th. And we will begin transitioning into some of the questions about some of the processes associated with getting the budget up and for 2023 in place. So I believe Ms. Tyson is at the door. Somebody can open the door. Okay, so um, let's go. Let's keep moving forward here. So what do we have next here? The clerk, we did that. Upcoming announcements and the process in place now for the American Rescue Plan. That is still the American Rescue Plan Committee. We're still looking for more responses to the survey. Our goal is to hit at least 200 responses to the survey on the American Rescue Plan. So if there are people out there that are interested in how the council will having input in how the council will spend the $3 million plus that are available for the currently available for the American Rescue Plan, please go out to the site, and that's muskegonheights.us/ARPA. Again, that's muskegonheights.us/ARPA. So when you go to that link, you will find a survey there that you can fill out to give your feedback and input on some of the ideas that you may have, some advice that you might have for council on how they should consider spending the American Rescue Plan funds. So please don't forget to do that. Just the survey is really brief. It takes you maybe 5 minutes max, but we want to have as much community engagement and community response as possible. Um, uh, as possible. So there's a comment here from Ms. Ari, says, why didn't you stop your vice mayor from going off? So I'm glad that you asked that question, because there is some misunderstanding in from some folks on what the role of the city manager is. I have 7 bosses, that is 7 council persons in place, and I am not the person who chairs the meeting. The city manager is not responsible for and is not the sergeant at arms at the meeting. So any expectation that people might have that I am responsible for the conduct or behavior of the people that I work for is not accurate. That's not the way the council manager form of government is set up. So ideally, the person who is chairing the meeting is responsible for the conduct in the meeting. And I think at the time the mayor was chairing the meeting. If the mayor is not able to intercede to address conduct, then you have typically a sergeant at arms that's in a position to manage the conduct or decorum in a meeting. In the absence of sergeant at arms, that job may fall on whoever the parliamentarian is, or who is assuming that role of parliamentarian, because our meetings, ideally, ostensibly, are managed by parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order. And so those are the areas that are designed and intended based on the council manager form of government to address those types of issues. Now, many councils also will adopt rules of decorum, protocols, norms that will clarify what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Our council had done that in the past, from what I understand. It's typical for council to ratify those norms on an annual basis or a biannual basis, or at least after every election if you have new members that join the council. And that gives the new council an opportunity to modify, alter, change those norms according to what they feel are the priorities of the protocols moving forward. And so I believe that is an item that is on the agenda. A presentation or a document was created by the city attorney for consideration of council. I know that there are certain specific council members who are working on that topic, and hopefully protocols, norms, rules of decorum will be addressed and ratified by the existing council. So thank you for your question. Glad I had an opportunity to clear that up. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. Now, going back to American Rescue Plan, we're talking about $3+ million, and we want to get to 200. So please fill out the survey. We have, if you don't have access to internet, and I'm assuming if you're watching this show today that you do have access, but I do know that there are some people who are listening on their radios. If you don't have access to that technology to go to the website to fill out the form, you can come into City Hall. We have paper copies of the survey so that you can fill those out and be heard anonymously if you'd like. If you'd like to sign your name, you can. But if you prefer anonymous, that option is available so that you can be part of and be heard in the process of identifying how that money should be spent. So next week, well, beginning on the 21st, the Michigan Municipal League branch for city managers, the Michigan executive managers will be hosting their summer conference in Holland. So I will be in attendance to that meeting. So I will not be doing my show likely for that week because of the fact that I will be in conference there in Holland. So I'm looking forward to getting together with the other city managers from across the state, comparing notes, and bringing back to our wonderful community any new ideas, new concepts, best practices that we can use and hone in Muskegon Heights. I do want to remind everybody, I've mentioned this in previous shows, that we are um, somewhere in the midst of $20 million worth of grants over the last 2 years. So um, we are doing pretty good in terms of bringing in outside money to get some things done. And we've talked about on the show how some of those things are about to jump off. Speaking of which, the award of the demolition project has been done for the Shops and Sherman development. That's right there on Peck and Sherman. And so the demolition is just about to begin. The contractor has been selected. The job has been awarded. So you will be seeing some construction fencing going up there. And after they go through the process of removing any hazardous materials that are on the site, which is a pretty delicate process, then they will begin the process of knocking down the building, which of course is the first stage to cleaning up that property. They will be removing all necessary soil that potentially was or is contaminated as a result of the dry cleaners that was there. And once that soil is removed and they have tested the remaining soil successfully and satisfactorily, then they will begin bringing in new fill and the construction process will begin from there. So exciting times here. And then the next couple of weeks, you should see some signs coming up subsequent to the 25th about the new houses that are being built. Like I said in previous show, the permits have been approved. They are going to begin clearing the sites of the first lots, which are up off of Mans and on Hackley Street. So to begin the building of our first new house and since 2004, well, really since 2014, because there were 3 houses that were built under the HUD program in 2014. But the first real push to build a sizable number, the contractor starting with 3. He expects that there's going to be a 90-day turnaround on the completion of these projects, and then begin moving into doing 3 more and 3 more, with the hope of getting to 29 relatively fast. So that is still moving forward. And let's see, I touched on that. New vehicles. The council approved the contract with Enterprise Fleet Management. So we will be replacing some of the really rundown vehicles that we've been piecing together, trying to keep them up and running, that are many, many, many years past their prime. We had a meeting with Enterprise Fleet Management on Tuesday morning to go through some of the particulars of the order, and they are in the process of ordering these vehicles. They're going to shop to see which vehicles are readily available and what the price is, and so that process is in motion. And as soon as they identify the right one that meets our needs, which they've been working on since it was approved, I think 3 weeks ago, they will be able to give us an ETA. So in the first round of vehicles, there's 15, I believe there's 15 vehicles that were identified for replacement. So it'll be nice to see the Muskegon Heights logo on the side of these vehicles that are new, polished, clean, and in good order to represent our city. So up and coming, as we're still striving to reach new heights. Um, let's see, what do we have next? I did get some more questions here online. Let's see. Marie Bradford says, why haven't our roads been fixed? War is that money for the roads? That's a very good question. And I can only tell you that currently and if you've been listening in on the show, you've heard this. So I apologize for having to repeat it. But the city is in a deficit. which means that we have more expenses than we do have revenues. And so that's why building new houses is important to be able to start generating revenue. We don't have the tax base that we need in order to support the minimal functions required for the city. And so right now, the only money that the city has specifically allocated for local streets is from a 4 mil millage rate that was approved years ago. And that 4 mil was used to repave Delano last year. And the next road that is slated is Leahy Street. And so that work went out to bid 2 weeks ago. They had a mandatory pre-bid meeting this morning. I believe started at 11 o'clock, ended at 12:30. Metro Consulting Associates is the engineering firm that is managing that bidding process. So we should have new bids in within 2 weeks and an award for a contractor to do the Leahy Street projects by August. So that is on tap. As far as the rest of the roads, we have limited funding to be able to do that. And so when you say fix the roads, we can patch the roads, which means we can fill the potholes, but that's not fixing the roads. That's just a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid. So to help you understand what that process looks like, we have historically had two patch kettles. And those patch kettles were in such poor condition that they were not operational. So we had to salvage one and replace another one. We had rented or leased a patch kettle that we ultimately ended up purchasing, which is a brand new high functioning patch kettle. And we've been using that patch kettle to fill as many potholes as we can. Unfortunately, working with one patch kettle, the other one, we put it in the shop to be rebuilt. And we are expecting that patch kettle to be back on the road on Monday. So that way we will have two patch kettles. And some of the additional functionality of that patch kettle, those patch kettles will help the patchwork that we do be more effective. Because as some of you noticed over the winter, we were putting fill into the holes, and within 3 or 4 days, with cars running over it, it would not adhere and it was coming back out. So with some of the additional bells and whistles, the patching work that we are doing now should be much longer lasting. And so we're hopeful that that will help to improve the number of potholes that we can get to and reduce the number of potholes that we have to turn around and come back to. So the moral of the story still is we have limited money, which means that we are piecing together equipment that we have. And on top of that, we have limited staffing within DPW. Back in 2008, I understand that the staffing for DPW was reduced by over half. And so what we have inherited in the last 3 years is a skeleton crew of public works. So with limited money, with limited equipment and limited staff, you get limited results. And that's the unfortunate aspect of it. Now, to answer your question about where is the money, that's a question that you'll have to pose to the folks that were here over the last 25 to 30 years and ask them about the decisions that they had to make in order to keep the city running for the last 25 to 30 years. I can't critique that because I wasn't here. And I'm sure that the folks that were the leaders of our community made some difficult decisions and choices. They may have been choices that I would not personally have agreed with, but I don't know the circumstances under which those choices were made. I can only say that looking at the condition of the roads that we have today, that there has not been an investment in our roads, a significant investment in our roads in the last 25 years. So I hope that answers your question. I know that you're frustrated. You have every right to be frustrated. I'm frustrated. Nobody likes to inherit managing and running a city that is in a deficit, that does not have the resources to provide the minimal services that it needs to. But that all goes back to the fundamental issue that This community was built based on supporting the infrastructure using 5,000 residences. Right now, we're operating with 3,700 residences. We've torn down home after home after home over the last 6 to 7 years, and now we have gaps. And if you don't have homes on these lots, you're not collecting the tax revenue, property tax revenue necessary to support a community of 11,000 people. And that's just the hard reality of it. So when you hear me talking about we need to build homes, that's not about gentrification. That's not about a smoke and mirrors type of thing. We need to have that basic revenue from our tax base in order to support our community. And so we have to start filling in these vacant lots with new homes. And, I've had to give over the last few weeks some difficult feedback to residents who want to purchase lots next door to them, which the city has historically done so that they could add on for a garage or they could add on so that they have a larger lot. But unfortunately, when a resident, all meaning well, does that, then that takes a lot that should have and did most likely have a house on it and turns it into a greenfield for which the property tax revenue is pennies versus the property tax revenue with a new house on it. We have to jealously and aggressively hold on to these lots to put new houses on these lots if we're going to bring our city back. We have to build new homes. We have to reconstruct our tax base. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is we have to figure out a way to bring industry back to our community. And that's why we've got the grant to work on the industrial parks, to be able to bring in commerce and business and industry, manufacturing, food processing, those types of things, to then generate the revenue, tax revenue, income tax revenue to help support and buoy our community. Let's see. It says, Mary Bradford says, why weren't Muskegon Heights residents included in the meeting? I'm not really sure which meeting you're talking about, but every meeting that the city has is a public meeting, and it is noticed, and it is an open meeting. So we have a meeting every second Monday and every fourth Monday of every month, unless there's a holiday. So those meetings are public meetings. You have an opportunity on the agenda to talk about, to have public input on items that are on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, you have an opportunity to provide public input on things that were not on the agenda, just anything in the wide realm of citizen concerns. Let's see. Ms. Aubrey is saying that we can legally change the charter to limit the number of rental properties. She's absolutely right. And so that is an action that it requires the council to, by resolution, to pull together a charter revision commission, if I'm not mistaken, and begin the process of modifying our charter. And so I would ask you to come into our council meetings to voice that interest to our council, if that is the direction that you would advise council to go on. And it would be an action of resolution that would move us in that direction. From what I understand, there's been two recent, the last 10 years efforts to modify the charter that have failed to get the necessary votes to do that. So I don't know what the issues were associated with that. But that's not to say that we can't have success this time around with that issue and a number of other issues with regard to the charter. So another question, why are all the important meetings held private? There are no important meetings that are held private. If there are more than 3 council people that are in the same place, i.e. if there's 4 or more, it has to be a publicly noticed meeting. You cannot, based on the Open Meetings Act, 3 council people is the maximum number of council people that you could have discussing or involved in deliberations concerning the city without having a open meeting. So, and the reason for the number being four is it takes four votes, four affirmative votes of any council person. I mean, of any. Let me back up. It requires four affirmative votes for any council action to be legitimate. So, therefore, if you have four council people together, there has to be a publicly announced, publicly noticed meeting in advance that allows the public to participate, allows the public the opportunity to see what's being discussed in order for it to be a legitimate meeting. So, there are no important private meetings unless you consider a meeting of three council people as an important meeting, but it by definition cannot be important enough to have an impact because in order for it to be valid, there has to be four council people together. And if there's four council people together, you have to have a notice for the meeting. But thank you for that question. Let's see. We've got 7th Street potholes that are 2 inches. Yep. And that is upsetting, but it is the reality of what we're dealing with. And hopefully, we will be able to generate the revenue to get this on track. We are strategically working with the money the grant, $7 million worth of grant money that we have been awarded, haven't received it, but we've been awarded to do water main projects and lead service line replacement projects. All of those projects come with road work. And so we are strategically using this money to do pipe projects in locations where we can get the most bang for our buck, fix the pipe underground, and realize that the pipes are nearing 100 years old here in Muskegon Heights, going back to the 1929, 1930 timeframe. So we are going to have to make sure that we get into the ground and replace the pipe with new pipe in order to get 40 to 50 more years out of our underground utility, water and sewer utility. But back to my point, we are using the need to replace those pipes to also address some of the road issues at the same time. And so, with the new projects that were awarded by council at 2 meetings ago, for the use of the $7 million that comes from the state, we will be replacing pipes on 7th and 8th Street in the Amsterdam to Rotterdam area, as well as pipes along Leahy Street north of Hackley. So, and I said pipes, but it's actually lead service lines that are going in on Leahy Street. And as part of that, we are marrying that with a road project there and a road project on 7th and 8th Street. So there will be some improvements to roads that is being paid for out of money that we're receiving for water. But outside of that, we've got to build new houses. There's no grant fund out there yet for our roads. Now, we keep hearing that infrastructure money is coming. Federal infrastructure money is coming through the state, and the state is getting ready to roll out an infrastructure program. And we've lined up projects to be able to apply for that when and if that does come out so that we can use those funds. We have run the analysis on our current situation with our roads, and the estimate in order to repave and fix the roads in Muskegon Heights based on their current condition is $110 million. So that $110 million, if you look at our current budget, our revenues are on average $9 million, $8.5 million a year. So just to see a comparison, our whole annual budget is about $9 million, and we have a $110 million bill in order to fix the roads. That's how massive the task is that we have in front of us. And ideally, over 30 years, you do a piece, a piece, a piece. And by the time you get to the end of the 30 years, it's time to go back to the first piece that you did and redo that piece. You don't end up having to spend $110 million all at once. But if you're not spending the $10 million a year to pave the roads over the 11, 12 years, and if you break that down to 5 million over 20 years, you got to pay it all at once, and we don't have the budget to pay it all at once. So that's what we're up against, unfortunately. Um, Uh, Mary is saying that the governor gave Muskegon Heights money for the roads and pipes 2 years in a row. That's not accurate. Not exactly accurate. The governor gave the state legislature gave the city $3 million to do Sherman Street, and we did Sherman Street. They didn't give us $3 million for the roads in general. They gave us $3 million to do Sherman Street, and we did Sherman Street. They have not given us a blank bucket of money and said, "Here, you know, let's go do whatever roads you want to do." That's not been the case. We have applied for DOT funding, MDOT funding to do streets using MDOT funding, and that MDOT funding allowed us to do Park Street. That MDOT funding allowed us to do sections of Hackley Street. And as you see, the last Hackley Street section was done at the close of last year, and the next street that was done is Delano Street for this year. So that's the way that those funds have been used. Uh, so so um, about new homes, I see a comment saying because the same as buying them up. We haven't built any new homes, so I'm not sure exactly what that reference is to, but we are about to build some new homes, and that is our lifeline to getting back on track. The programs that we've put in place through my administration and my office require that if a builder comes in to build new homes, that they also offer access to credit repair, down payment assistance, and mentorship for the first-time home buyers. So that is an effort to make those homes available to uh, the people who currently live in this community, to maintain the fiber of this community. Our focus is to first address transitioning people from renting into home ownership. Unfortunately, this process has been delayed almost 2 years, partially because of COVID and partially because of other delays to approving the award of these projects. But so interest rates are going up, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult than it would have been 2 years ago, but we're still moving forward with what we got. And like I said, that focus is to build a bridge from renting to owning for people that live in this community. The other thing is for these homes, they have to be for home ownership. They're not for rentals. To Ms. Aubrey's point before, we want to increase the percentage of our homes that are owner occupied. Right now, we have between 50 and 60% of our homes that are renter occupied, depending on who you talk to. So let's see. Sherman is fixed on every year. I don't know that that is the case. We didn't fix on Sherman last year. Sherman has been in place for 2 years now, and there was no fixing that was done on Sherman. Like I said, the only money that was put into Sherman was money from that project. So a couple of misunderstandings about the way the funds are distributed here, but I'm happy to clarify that. The funds that we have that we're working with are from the 4 mil millage rate, and those funds I've already talked about how those are allocated. So in terms of filling potholes, DPW works on filling potholes on as many roads as possible. Some of the roads are in such a condition that you can't even fill a pothole because there's no road left. You have to do a complete reconstruction of the road, which is the case on many of our roads. And so that's the unfortunate reason why we're looking at a $110 million bill for that. So we're almost at the end of the meeting answering questions, but that's a good thing because I like to hear what people need to know. And this show is all about getting to know what you need to know so you'll be in the know. And sometimes we have to work through some misconceptions and misunderstandings in order to get there. So that's all good. It's a good thing. But I do want to take some time to address some of the questions that came in about sidewalk maintenance. So in our ordinances, it says that well, first of all, prohibitive growth. So we have our inspectors that are out, code enforcement officers that are out issuing citations for prohibitive growth. So if you've got houses that are across the street from you or next door that have high growth, please contact City Hall. Let us know. Our code enforcement officers are out there trying to identify as many of those as they can and citing those. Section 86-81 says that no owner of any parcel of land within the city or the agent of such owner shall permit on such parcel of land or upon any sidewalk abutting the land or upon the portion of any street or alley adjacent to the land between the property line and the curb or traveled portion of such street or alley any growth of weeds, grass, or other rank vegetation to a greater height than 8 inches on average, or any accumulation of dead weeds, trees, grass, leaves, or brush, nor shall such owner or agent permit on such land poison ivy, ragweed, or any other poisonous, noxious, or unhealthy growths. So 86-81 is the primary ordinance under which that is being addressed. And so please I encourage everybody to make sure that they keep their grass below 8 inches so that they don't get a citation. It allows the ordinance 8682 says that we must publish as a city before May 1st notice indicating pretty much what I just read from 86-81, which we did. And that allows us in the situations or cases where vegetation exceeds 8 inches to enter in upon the property and cut the grass and remove the offending growth and send the bill to the owner. So just a heads up on that, if you are not keeping your lawn cut or there's a chronic issue in your neighborhood, you can call and report it to DPW or to City Hall, and we can cite that and also go in and correct it and send the bill to the owner. So if you end up getting it in the mail, you see that your property has been cut, you will likely be followed up with a bill in the mail for that work that DPW has done. So, forewarning, we're moving forward. We're trying to attack the overgrowth in the community. That's not just 8 inches on the lawn, but it's all the grass that grows up in the cracks on the sidewalk and on the curb line, all that stuff from the terrace as well. So I want everybody to be aware that's listening to the show that we will be moving forward with citations for that, and we will be moving forward with actually, if your property is not kept in order, cutting it and billing you for the cost of it. So that is on prohibitive growth. The next issue that I wanted to give clarity on is the question about sidewalks. Section 7495 says that if the owner of any lot or premises shall fail to build any particular sidewalk as described in such notice and within the time and in the manner required thereby, the engineer is hereby authorized and required immediately after the expiration of the time limited for the construction or building by the owner to cause such sidewalk to be constructed. The expense of such construction shall be charged to such premises and the owner of the premises and collected as provided for single lot assessments in the city charter. 7496 says that no person shall permit any sidewalk which adjoins their property owned by him to fall into a state of disrepair or to be unsafe. And so those two and the following ordinance clarify that according to our existing ordinances now, that it is the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain their sidewalks. So even in the event that a tree on the terrace falls and the tree disrupts the sidewalk, it clearly says in the next ordinance that it is the responsibility of the homeowner to fix the sidewalk. Now, we've tried to work with, since I've been here, work with homeowners to address those situations. But the question did come up about whether or not it was, in fact, the responsibility of the homeowner or the city to repair and maintain the sidewalk. So I just wanted to make it clear, according to the existing ordinances, that's the way it is. Until such time as there's action taken by council to change that, that is the existing ordinance. Um, and The ordinance also go on to say that the city has the right to access the property, enter upon the property, and remove a nuisance and bill the property owner for the removal of the nuisance. And that is section 80, I'm sorry, dyslexia. That's section 38-27. So take a look at 38-27. You can look at our codes online at muskegonheights.us. Section 74-95 and section 86-81 are the ones that you want to look at. So glad to be able to clarify that. So if residents have questions, they can come to our council meetings and talk about the specific ordinances that they have issues with. It's my job to work as hard as possible to enforce the ordinances that exist, not to question the validity of the ordinances, but to work towards enforcing them until such time as they are modified or they are changed or deleted. So I want to make sure that that is clear. Not the fun part of my job, but it is one of the aspects that gives us an opportunity to beautify our community. By having standards and having structure to those standards and enforcing those standards as consistently as possible across the whole community. And so that's what the existing city staff has been challenged to do, is to enforce the ordinances in an orderly way and consistent way across the city so that we can bring back that structure and that beautification to our community based on these types of standards of way properties should look. Now, I will say that there's a lot of work ahead of us in that regard. And it won't be in a day that we get to every property. So I understand the frustration of a resident that says, hey, I got a bill for my grass being cut, but on the other side of the street or down the street, their grass is still 12 inches tall. And just be aware that we are, with the staff that we are working our way across the whole community to try to address these problems. And so it's not that an individual homeowner is being singled out. It is that we are systematically working our way through the community to address these issues. So I appreciate it when I have an opportunity to speak to residents and hear their frustration about being held accountable when it appears that other people are not being held accountable. And I can assure them and confirm that we are working to hold everybody accountable across the board. So that is our show for today. Didn't get a chance to cover as much as I wanted to cover, but it's good that we had some feedback and input. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss. I guess there was one from Fred Bates about businesses that have left the city or closed down. More is to follow. One reason why is that the city does not know what they are doing. Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence, Mr. Bates, but I will assure you that the part that I am responsible for is based on the sound principles of city management. As a credentialed manager with ICMA, that is the work that I'm doing. I cannot change everything. I'm not accountable for the entirety of that formula, but that's not my concern. My concern is to try to focus on the stuff that we're supposed to do to make sure that we reach new heights. And we would not have garnered $20 million worth of grants over the last 2 years if we weren't endearing the folks that have the money in the idea that things are changing. So, and I get it. I understand wholeheartedly how residents who have been here and watched 30 years of decline would be impatient. I would be impatient. But what I can say is that we are moving in the right direction. We're moving in a positive direction. It's not as fast as I would like it to be. I mean, I would love to have a house go up here in Muskegon Heights yesterday so I can buy a house. And so I'm eagerly waiting for new houses to be built here at Muskegon Heights. But we are moving in the positive direction. And if we continue to put one foot in front of the other, I firmly believe that within 2 to 3 years, you will see a noticeable difference. And those people that might have not been patient enough to wait another 2 to 3 years will be kicking themselves thinking, I should have held on. And so, yes, we may lose some businesses. There may be a lack of confidence in some of the businesses, but I will tell you, usually business follows money. And when you talk about $20 million worth of investment in a community of 11,000, that says something to the business community that there is some confidence behind that $20 million worth of grants and funding. So, and I did not mention about vacant buildings. Again, if you have hold property in Muskegon Heights and it's vacant, you have a responsibility to register your building as vacant every year that it is vacant. And you have to pay a fee in order to register your building as vacant. And the number of years that your building has been vacant will determine the amount of the fee. In the first year, it's 500. The next year, it's 1,000. Then the next year after that, it's 2,000. In the fourth year, it's 2,000, the fee to register a vacant building. And then it goes up to $3,500. And on it escalates from there. So if you have property that's vacant in Muskegon Heights, the ordinance says that you have to register it within 6 months of it being vacant. And every year at the anniversary, you have to register and pay the fee in order to hold on to a vacant building. And that does not excuse you from paying that vacant building fee. Still means that you have to keep it up. It still means that you have to cut the grass, you have to keep the paint on it, you have to keep the siding on it, you have to keep the fence fixed. Just paying the vacant building fee doesn't mean you get a pass on all the other ordinances. So all of those folks that have commercial vacant buildings or residential vacant buildings, you have been receiving invoices for those vacant building fees. It is your responsibility to register it according to the ordinance and pay the fee. What we have not been doing as of yet is enforcing the penalty on those fees. And very shortly here, we will begin enforcing the penalty. If you fail to register, not only do you have to pay the fee, but there's a penalty that ranges from $100 to $500 penalty for failure to register and pay that fee. And so what that means is you can't just hold on to property and let it sit vacant, waiting for a day that you can cash in. It is going to cost you to hold on to vacant property in this community. That hopefully will release the stranglehold so that businesses can come in and people can come in and purchase those properties and make gainful use of those properties instead of the people who have them holding on to them and not doing anything with them. It's going to cost you to hold on to property that's not being functional here in Muskegon Heights, and that's what the ordinance says. So thank you, Ms. Aubrey, for reminding me of that. And with that, I'm at my 10-minute mark, and I have to sign off or else get in trouble. So thank you for tuning in to Reaching New Heights with Troy Bell, the city manager, City of Muskegon Heights, where you get to know what you need to know so you'll be in the know. Continue to be blessed, and thank you for